Hi, I just wrote an article about Purim, and rather than talk about the article, I'd like to talk a little bit about Purim. Purim is probably the most misunderstood holiday of the year. Everyone thinks that Purim is for kids and Pesach is for adults, and it's actually the opposite. Purim is when I've done some of the most deep personal fixings, what we call tikkunim, some of the most deep introspections that changed me drastically in ways I didn't understand at the time and probably still don't understand. Um, I'm sure some people understand it, and I'm sure other people are saying, "Oh yeah, you're calm down." So let me tell you a little bit about Purim. My first Purim in yeshiva, I dressed up like a biker in my old clothes, like black leather jacket, and got real drunk and sat in a corner and cried, which is the one thing a biker never does. The Purim is about changing things over and going to a very deep place. But probably my biggest change came. There was one Purim I was in yeshiva, and I got married when I was 39, and it was a very long and difficult journey until I found my wife and until I was ready to meet her. And so there I was in yeshiva. I was 30 some years old, and I was single, and I was watching these young guys come in and make major life changes and very quickly get married and very quickly go off and be happy. And it was very painful for me to watch. Um, and year after year, I saw this happen. And year after year, they saw me seeing it happen. And one year, it was just before Purim, and it was Purim, and we were praying in the morning, and things were kind of scattered. And then after I finished praying in the morning, one of the guys, boy, he was 20 years old, came over to me, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Come here, we've got something for you." And I go over, and they set up a table, three guys, they set up a court, Beit Din. And everyone crowded around, and everyone's looking at me, and they say, "We've decided that you're going to get married this year. We have made a judgment." And I was furious. I said, "How dare you, you little pipsqueaks, you untested, untried, spoiled little children. You dare to look at my pain and just write it off?" And this was not exactly the reaction they were expecting, but there we were in public, and three of these guys sitting there acting like judges looking at me, and they looked at each other and they said, "Well, yeah, that's what we've done." I said, "Well, look around. I mean, it's clear that there's a heavenly decree that I should be single. Are you willing to go against the heavenly decree?" I mean, I've already been drinking quite a bit in the morning. I was very drunk. But sometimes when you drink, a lot of truth comes out. So they looked at each other and said, "Yes, even if there's a heavenly decree, we're judging against it." And I said, "Well, do you know what it means? Do you realize what it'll take to help me? What it'll take to change me? What it'll take to change that decree? Are you still willing to do it?" And they looked at each other and they said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "You spoiled, stupid children. Do you know how much pain I'm in? Do you know what it would take to change that? Do you know what I've done? And how much judgment has to be pushed aside for me to deserve to have a wife? And they looked at each other and they said, well, we've decided that you're going to get married this year. And I leaned forward, I put my hands on the table, and I got in their faces. And just as I started to let loose, with all the pent-up anger, all the pent-up rage and nastiness I could muster, I broke. I broke completely. I fell down on the floor, crying uncontrollably, totally broken. And all the men in the yeshiva took a tallis, held it over me, and started dancing like they would at a wedding. One of those men is happily married. One of those men ended up not so happy. And the other had to go through a long period of time, and he was just about my age when he got married. And I'm not going to pretend to understand the story. But that's what happened. And before the year was over, I met my wife, and before Purim, we got engaged, and in between Purim and Pesach, we got married. I'm not going to pretend to understand that either. So just know Purim is really the very deepest holiday there is. It can change the world. It's a really long journey. And there's some really unexpected things out there. Have a good Purim.